खबरां दा लेखा जोखा फरवरी 21-2025 ਸਪਾਂਸਰ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਲਿਕਰ 62। ਘਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਗਮ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਹੈ, ਵਿਆਹ ਸ਼ਾਦੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਵਧੇਰੇ ਵੈਰਾਈਟੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰ ਵੰਨਗੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਔਰ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਰਾਬ ਖਰੀਦਣੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਹੁੰਚੋ ਲਿਕਰ 62 ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ। ਪਤਾ ਹੈ 6285 ਕਿੰਗ ਜੋਰਜ ਬੁਲੇਵਾਰਡ।
Team Canada delivers win for its country. That's the Canadian way. The best player in the world ended one of the best games ever seen to claim hockey's supremacy for Canada over the United States, Finland, and Sweden. Somebody's got to shoot in the net. Canada coach John Cooper said all throughout this Four Nations face-off. Why not Connor McDavid? His shot to the top corner of Connor Hellebuyck's net secured the 3-2 win, 8-18 into the overtime after Jordan Binnington saved Canada's bacon. In overtime, they kind of took over, honestly, and Binnington was unbelievable, said Nathan McKinnon, who opened the game with his fourth goal of the tournament and ended it wearing a gold medal and being named Most Valuable Player. It was Binnington who proved his worth with 6 saves before McDavid scored. The most scrutinized player in the tournament, according to Cooper, saved his best for last, stopping Auston Matthews 3 times in the extra frame. Then Matthews let McDavid slip by and make his way into the slot. We just needed one look and Connor was very open. So that was very nice, said McKinnon. Usually when he's that open, it's in the net. McDavid raised his arms after lifting a nation to the top of hockey's biggest podium. He, Sidney Crosby, and McKinnon led his team in a way only 3 of the greatest players of all time could. They did it by scoring the most points, finishing first, second, and third for Canada. And by sacrificing the most for the betterment of the group, they did it as underdogs to the greatest American team ever assembled, a team that beat them 3-1 last Saturday, and they did it in the hostile territory in front of fans that booed the Canadian national anthem and filled the air with USA, 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 said Johnny Hockey chants all night. At the time of unprecedented political friction between both nations driven by President Donald Trump slapping tariffs on Canadian goods and antagonistically referring to Canada as the 51st state, Team Canada delivered a win for its country. Throughout the tournament, Cooper urged his players to play the right way, the Canadian way, and that's what they did. They did all the right things, Cooper said after taking a sip of what he referred to as his Canadian-made beverage. For this group of players and the talent level they have, for them to do what they did away from the puck, and that's the Canadian way. That's walking into a restaurant and opening the door for somebody to walk in first. That's the Canadian way, and I couldn't be more proud. A nation celebrated. I just hope Canada proud because every player in that room is proud to be a Canadian, Cooper said. And yeah, did we need a win? Not only for our team, but Canada needed a win, and the players bared that on their shoulders. This one was different. This wasn't a win for themselves. This was a win for 40+ million people, and the guys knew it and they delivered. It was McDavid in the clutch before later saying, I struggled all night. Mitch Marner made a beautiful pass to set him up after Cale Makar made one of several game-defining plays. Makar was missing from Saturday's loss due to illness, but arguably stood out more than anyone in front of Binnington's crease to deliver his win for Canada. The role players such as Brad Marchand, who lauded Team USA as the best team he's ever faced, played the roles to perfection. Even the replacement players proved irreplaceable, with Thomas Harley initially subbing in for Makar and injured defenseman Shea Theodore last week before replacing Josh Morrissey's illness and assisting on McKinnon's goal Thursday. Sam Bennett was scratched from the tournament opening win over Sweden but came up with the goal that tied the championship game 2-2 after Brady Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson scored for the US. Matthew Tkachuk, who played sparingly throughout the first half of the game and not at all in the third period and overtime due to his lower body injury, said after instigating the first of 3 fights in USA's win over Canada last Saturday that the message he, his brother Brady and JT Miller were sending with their fist was, "This is our time." McKinnon said after McDavid won it for Canada, "It feels good to be on top this time." They are an amazing team. The Cole Harbour native added for the American team, which played without Quinn Hughes and lost Charlie McAuliffe to injury earlier this week. They were the favorites coming in, and we pride ourselves on being the best hockey nation. For another year at least, we have some bragging rights. We've got to go do it again next February. The Milano Cortina Olympic Games are scheduled for then, and a claim to hockey supremacy will be available to more than just 4 nations there. In Boston, Canada was crowned over 3 other countries that competed in some of the greatest games ever played. "We wanted this one," said Mark Stone. "You've got 40 million Canadians sitting at home and you feel the energy. Anytime you have the chance to play for our country or get the flag on our chest, it's special feeling. It's hockey. That's what we do right. It brings us together."
ਕੱਲ 4 ਨੇਸ਼ਨ ਫੇਸ ਆਫ ਦੇ ਫਾਈਨਲ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਦਾਰਸ਼ਨਿਕ ਗੇਮ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਜਿੱਤ ਦੇ ਰੂਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਪਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਉਸ ਦੇ ਚਰਚੇ ਸਾਰੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਨੇ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਖੁਲਾਸਾ ਖਿਡਾਰੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਲਾਜਵਾਬ ਖੇਡ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਦਿਖਾਇਆ, ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ 40 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ ਦੀ ਉਡੀਕ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਨ। ਇਹ ਦਾਰਸ਼ਨਿਕ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਖੇਡ ਆ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਇਤਿਹਾਸ ਸਿਰਜਦੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਖਿਡਾਰੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਦੀ ਔਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਬੰਧਿਤ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਉਸ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਸ਼ੰਸਾ ਤੇ ਚਰਚਾ ਚਾਰੇ ਪਾਸੇ ਹੈ।
Canadian company asked Vancouver to back out of US-based lime contract. With the push to buy BC in response to the looming trade war with the United States, a Canadian company is urging Vancouver to back out of an existing contract with an American firm. Bird Canada's CEO was written a letter to the city of Vancouver asking it to reconsider an agreement reached last summer with US-based scooter share service Lime. Bird was a runner-up in the bid for the contract, and Vancouver councillor Pete Fry says the company is asking the city to reconsider that decision given the push from municipalities to support BC and Canadian businesses. His concern was that he had awarded the contract to a scooter competitor called Lime, which is an American-based company. He was, I think, hoping we would reconsider our procurement and contract with Lime to favor a Canadian company, Fry said. That is exactly what Bird is pushing for, according to CEO Stuart Lyons. Given we are Canadian, I think Vancouver City Council should put their money where their mouth is and support Canadian businesses, just like they are being asked to do all across the country. Lyons says Bird is a global micro-mobility company, but is Canadian-owned and operated, providing services in Surrey, Vernon, Cranbrook, and locations in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Quebec, and Ontario. It will be little challenging for Vancouver because they have already entered a contract with the other provider, but usually these contracts give the city an out because municipalities like to have flexibility. I obviously haven't seen the Vancouver one, but if they have an out, they should reconsider using it to look at Canadian options. Fry says recent motion has directed city staff to report back on opportunities that favor Canadian over American procurement, but the contract with Lime was awarded before any hint of a trade war with the US. Obviously, this was negotiated prior to Trump's election, and I don't think anybody anticipated the impacts of what a Trump agenda might look like, he said. I think Lime won out on a technical consideration, and I think they've also invested at this point significantly in their infrastructure to deliver their service in Vancouver, so we may be too far down that path to reconsider. Fry says the coming staff report will likely include a look at the Lime contract as well as other larger procurement files with American companies such as Microsoft, but he suggests they are not looking to tearing up existing agreements. A lot of this stuff is contract based, and we will exist under the rule of law regardless of how Trump treats the rule of law. BCAA, the British Columbia Automobile Association, is also urging municipalities to consider using local micro-mobility solutions. Leanne Bohler is head of the company's Evolve a Bike and a Scooter Share. Right now, more than ever, it's important to support our local businesses and associations. For us, it's about bringing awareness to having local operators available in this industry. Evolve currently has operations in Whistler, Nanaimo, Kootenay, Comox, and Burnaby, along with cargo bike sharing in North Vancouver. These are all communities that have chosen a local provider, which we are excited Unlike Bird, Canada, Bohler says they have not directly approached any municipalities potentially switching from already existing US-based services. Our focus right now is really about talking about the benefits of buying local and advocating for products and services here in BC. We really understand that every municipality has to make the best decision for their communities, Bohler said, but we know that supporting local companies like Evolve keeps the investment in our communities. Meanwhile, Fry admits weighing the cost and benefits of the Team Canada approach to procurement can be complicated. Sometimes there's no viable alternative to US companies and service. It's a complex piece because obviously we do have a contract with Lime, and it was an open and fair procurement process where I'd expressed a preference of a Canadian company like Bird. Lime was recommended based on technical performance and investment in new infrastructure to support their offering, he explained. And of course, all of this happened before Trump was elected president. It's unfortunate that things have become so toxic, but that's where we are at now.
ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਾਈਮ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਦੇ ਸਕੂਟਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਅਮਰੀਕਨ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਦਾ ਔਰ ਉਸ ਬਿੱਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਦੂਜੇ ਨੰਬਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਰਹੀ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਕੰਪਨੀ ਦਾ ਹੁਣ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਿਟੀ ਆਫ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਨੂੰ ਆਪਣੇ ਇਸ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਹੋ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਜੋ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਰਾਜਨੀਤਿਕ ਤੇ ਆਰਥਿਕ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨੈਸਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੋਤਸਾਹਿਤ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਮੁੱਢਲੇ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਾਰਵਾਈਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਜਾ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਮੱਦੇ ਨਜ਼ਰ ਇਹ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਗਰ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਤਾਂ ਨਿਕਲ ਜਾਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਸ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ CEO ਵੱਲੋਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਗਈ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਿਟੀ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਉਂਸਲਰ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਦੱਸਿਆ ਕਿ ਕਿਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਇਹ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਉਦੋਂ ਦੇ ਵਿਧੀ ਵਿਧਾਨ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਟਰੰਪ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਾਜਪਾਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਸ ਖੇਤਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਮ ਕਰਨ ਤੋਂ ਉਪਰੰਤ ਇਸ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਬਾਹਰ ਨਾ ਨਿਕਲਿਆ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਮਿਊਨਿਸਪੈਲਿਟੀਆਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਵੇ ਆਊਟ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖ ਲੈਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। ਔਰ ਇਹ ਫੈਸਲੇ ਜਾਂ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਜੋ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਮੌਜੂਦਾ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਰਾਜਨੀਤਿਕ ਜੋ ਆਸਾਰ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਟੌਕਸਿਕ এনवायरमेंट ਆ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੈਨੇਡੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਿਜ਼ਨੈਸਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰਾਇੋਰਟੀ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਬਾਰ-ਬਾਰ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ।
Canada can legally challenge tariffs, but will Trump fall in line with the ruling? If US President Donald Trump imposes tariffs on Canadian goods, as he's repeatedly threatened to do, experts say Canada has a strong case to challenge it under the Canada-US-Mexico Free Trade Agreement. The question, though, is how quickly any decision may come through the process, and more importantly, whether the US would respect any decisions from the outcome. A rule-based system is only as good as the willingness of the government who is subject to it to comply with it, said Wendy Warner, a partner at Gowling WLG. The free trade agreement is a nation-to-nation agreement, so there is no one else to appeal to it if a country decides not to respect a decision. America's past performance on adhering to trade decisions have been mixed. Areas of contention include complicated measures such as figuring out how much foreign content is an automobile for the long-running softwood lumber dispute. What Trump has threatened, though, blanket 25% tariffs on Canadian goods, with the exception of 10% tariffs on energy, doesn't contain much gray area, said Wendy. We're not arguing around the edges here, she said. There couldn't be anything more offensive to a free trade agreement than a 25% across-the-border tariffs on the products that originate from that country. It's the most bluntly unethical measure that you could impose. The blatancy of the threatened measures do bring into question whether any ruling through treaty channels will have much impact, Wagner said. There's a larger issue about the extent of adherence to a rules-based system, both internationally and domestically. The U.S. has already shown a disregard to findings in the past. When it imposed metal tariffs in 2018, the World Trade Organization ultimately ruled in favor of China that the move wasn't allowed, but the U.S. refused to comply. Canada could also decide to challenge this round of tariffs at the WTO as well as through CUSMA. Based on the rules of the original treaty, Canada could launch a challenge which would prompt mandatory consultations between countries within 30 days of filing the complaint. If there is no resolution through that step, the next would be to establish a dispute settlement panel. It acts as a sort of tribunal and goes through the process of hearing arguments, evaluating the evidence, and produces a report on its findings. The time it takes to get through a complaint varies, but past cases have generally run around a year to a year and a half, Wagner said. The dispute panel's report sets out the offending country needs to do to fix the trade issues. If the U.S. didn't comply, then Canada would be allowed under the system to impose dollar-for-dollar countermeasures. This is something Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has already said the government will do as soon as the U.S. imposes tariffs, but technically Canada will also be in violation of the treaty if it imposes counter tariffs ahead of the process. While Canada may have to get ahead of the process to respond given the scale of the threat, it's still important it goes through the treaty steps to get to the same results, said Clifford Sosnow, a partner at Fasken Martineau du Moulin. Ultimately, the result of the grievance process is in compliance, and if there is no compliance, retaliation, and so is in many ways you are back to square one, he said. But symbolically and legally, it is important aspect to it, because if effectively for Canada is an affirmation of the importance of the agreement. Going through the process will also force the U.S. to participate and submit to the process. That makes it harder for it to say it's abandoning the whole treaty, Sosnow. Effectively, it creates some stickiness between a president who's already poorly disposed towards the agreement and at the same time affirms the legitimacy of the agreement. For Canada, following the legal step also affirms that the legal structure is the way to resolve disputes, he said. In other words, a rule-based system as opposed to a power-based system, so there's both strategic value to this and there's symbolic value to it. A U.S. refusal to participate in the process would effectively renounce the whole treaty, a sharp contrast to Trump's apparent position that he wants a better version of the treaty he originally agreed to when negotiations open up on June 1st of 2026. It would be effectively a highly controversial and in fact I would suggest an unprecedented rapid repudiation of the government. A full abandoning of the treaty would be much more significant than Trump's tariffs, which he claims to be doing over national security concerns at the border. While the claims are tenuous at best, Sosno said they are at least still within the framework of the treaty. The logic of that is very poor. The logic of that is very weak. But that's the tenuous connection to the agreement. When Trump last imposed tariffs on Canada's steel and aluminium in 2018, the process was resolved through counter tariffs and diplomacy, not through the treaty process. The last round had Canada agreed to several measures to limit exports of what the U.S. considered subsidized metal, but Sosno said Trump has made it clear he's not interested to a measured solution. That seemed to mollify the president in 2018. Right now, the president is saying, I want to be mollified by the second time around.
ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਪਦਾਰਥਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਲਾਏ ਜਾਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਟੈਰਿਫ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਚੈਲੰਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ? ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਉਣੀਆਂ ਮਾਹਰਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਕਾਰੀਆਂ ਦੇਣੀਆਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ ਨੇ। ਦੱਸਿਆ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਅੰਤਿਮ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਇਹ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਵਾਲਾ ਵਿਅਕਤੀ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਖਿਲਾਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਕਾਰਵਾਈ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਹ ਕਿਸੇ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੀ ਸਹਿਮਤੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਉਹ ਜਤਾਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਜਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ। ਅਗਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਤਾਂ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਕੁਝ ਵੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਆ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ, ਬਲਕਿ ਹਾਂ ਤਿੰਨਾਂ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਹੋਏ ਵਪਾਰਕ ਸੰਧੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੰਟਰਪਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉਹ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਡੋਨਲਡ ਟਰੰਪ ਹੋਰਾਂ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਟੈਰਿਫ ਦੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਹੁਣ 25% ਦੀਆਂ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹ ਬਜਿੱਦ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਲਗਾਏ ਜਾਣਗੇ। 2018 ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਟੈਰਿਫ ਲਗਾਇਆ ਸੀ, ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਬਾਤਾਂ ਰਾਹੀਂ ਤੇ ਸੰਧੀਆਂ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋੜਤਾ ਦੇ ਅੰਤਰਗਤ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਮਝੌਤਾ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਸੀ। ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਡੋਨਲਡ ਟਰੰਪ ਨੇ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਕਰ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਕਿ ਹੁਣ ਇਸ ਵਾਰੀ ਉਹ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰਕਾਰ ਦੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ ਸੰਧੀਨਾਮੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਗੌਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਗੇ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ 'ਤੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਉਂਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਤਿੰਨਾਂ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵਪਾਰਕ ਸਮਝੌਤੇ ਇਸ ਸੰਧੀ ਦੇ ਅੰਤਰਗਤ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਖੜੌਤ ਤੇ ਵਿਗਾੜ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹ ਆਏਗਾ, ਔਰ ਜਿਹਦੇ ਕਿ ਮਾੜੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਸਰ ਨੇ ਉਹ ਦੋਵੇਂ ਮੁਲਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਪੈਣ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਹਾਂ, ਇਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਤਫਤੀਸ਼ ਹੋ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੱਖ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਕਿ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਬਰਾਬਰ ਟੈਰਿਫ ਲਗਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਵਾਲ ਫਿਰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਆ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਇਹ ਸਮਝੌਤੇ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਗੈਰ ਕਾਨੂੰਨੀ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦਾ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਵੀ ਫਿਰ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਬਰਾਬਰ ਹੀ ਜਾ ਖੜਦਾ ਹੈ।
Metro Vancouver Regional District considers $22 million budget cuts. Under pressure to get its fiscal house in order, the Metro Vancouver Regional District is looking at making $22 million in cuts. At its board meeting on Friday, the district will look at external contributions highlighted by staff that could be reduced or cut altogether. The contributions and programs identified by staff could impact its partnership with the PNE, the Fraser Basin Council, and the Coquitlam Watershed Roundtable. It could also see agriculture awareness grants, culture grants, and substance innovation grants next. While the overall number of possible savings up to $22 million would help the district's bottom line, individual households may see minimal savings. According to staff, if the district were to discontinue the agricultural awareness grants, an overall saving of $60,000, household would save less than 5 cents per year. Similarly, if the district discontinued its funding for the Fraser Basin Council, it would save $300,000 annually, but households would see a saving of around 25 cents per year. However, the highlighted moves from staff may not be enough for local civic critics. New Westminster Councillor Daniel Fontaine is among those who say the regional district needs to do a lot more to show property owners that it's spending the tax dollars wisely.
ਰੀਜਨਲ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਦੀ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਆ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਕਿਤਾਬਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਰਾਬਰ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ $22 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਦੀਆਂ ਕਟੌਤੀਆਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਪੈਣਗੀਆਂ। ਇਸ ਦਾ ਭਾਵ ਸਪਸ਼ਟ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕੁਝ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਟੌਤੀ ਹੋਏਗੀ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ PNA ਦਾ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੋਰ ਕਈ ਵੱਡੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਦੇ ਅੰਤਰਗਤ ਚੱਲਦੇ ਨੇ। ਪਰ $22 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਜਟ ਨੂੰ ਬੈਲੈਂਸ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਕਟੌਤੀਆਂ ਕਰਨੀਆਂ ਪੈ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿ ਅੰਕੜਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਦਰਸਾਇਆ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕੁਝ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਨੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੂੰ 3 ਲੱਖ ਜਾਂ ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਦੀ ਫੰਡਿੰਗ ਹੈ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਵੱਲੋਂ ਦਿੱਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈ, ਅਗਰ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਔਸਤਨ ਇੱਕ ਘਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਲਾਗੂ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਵੇ ਤਾਂ ਕੁਝ ਕੁ ਸੈਂਟ, ਕਈਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੁਆਟਰ ਦਾ ਹੀ ਫਰਕ ਘਰ ਨੂੰ ਪੈਣਾ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਜੋ ਆਰਥਿਕਤਾ ਦਾ ਹਾਲਤ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤਾਂ ਡਿਸਟ੍ਰਿਕਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ $22 ਮਿਲੀਅਨ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕਟੌਤੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਾਟਮ ਲਾਈਨ ਨੂੰ ਸਹੀ ਕਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆ ਸਹਾਈ ਸਿੱਧ ਹੋਵੇਗੀ।